In a bustling suburb of Denver, 14-year-old Marcus Wright was the kind of student everyone admired but few truly understood. Standing at 5 feet 8 inches with a lean frame, short curly hair, and piercing brown eyes, Marcus carried himself with quiet confidence. Known for his sharp intellect and kind heart, he was often found helping his classmates with math problems or cracking jokes to lighten the mood. Despite his affable nature, Marcus was no stranger to the challenges of being one of the few black students in a predominantly white school. He loved basketball, dreamed of becoming an engineer, and had a knack for writing poetry, a passion he kept hidden, fearing it might make him a target for teasing. His mother, a nurse, and his father, a truck driver, had instilled in him the value of hard work and resilience. However, beneath his composed exterior, Marcus harbored insecurities about fitting in and proving his worth. Marcus's days at Redwood High followed a predictable rhythm. Each morning, he would grab a quick breakfast, usually toast and scrambled eggs, before heading out with his well-worn backpack slung over one shoulder. He enjoyed walking to school, a 10-minute trek through tree-lined streets that gave him time to think and mentally prepare for the day. In the classroom, Marcus excelled academically, often earning praise from his peers for his ability to simplify complex concepts. Yet, there was one class that consistently made him uneasy: history, taught by Mr. Bradley. The tall, stern-faced teacher seemed to single Marcus out, often questioning his answers in a tone that felt less like curiosity and more like scrutiny. Lunchtimes were Marcus's escape. Sitting with his friends, Jordan, a talkative basketball teammate, and Emily, a budding artist, he found solace in their shared jokes and lively debates about sports and music. Still, a shadow lingered in the back of his mind, a subtle tension he couldn't shake. Redwood High was a sprawling, 2-story building with wide hallways and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. The walls were adorned with motivational posters, student artwork, and trophies from sports championships. The school prided itself on diversity, but the reality was far from the ideal presented in its brochures. In Marcus's history class, the atmosphere was markedly different. Rows of wooden desks faced a whiteboard covered in neat handwriting. The room was lined with shelves of dusty books, maps of ancient civilizations, and framed portraits of historical figures. Mr. Bradley's desk, cluttered with papers and coffee mugs, sat like a fortress at the front of the room. His booming voice often filled the space, commanding attention but rarely inviting discussion. Marcus often felt like an outsider here, especially when Mr. Bradley's eyes landed on him. Whether it was an exaggerated sigh when Marcus asked a question or a dismissive comment when he volunteered an answer, the undercurrent of hostility was palpable. One crisp November morning, Marcus arrived early to history class, eager to participate in a discussion about the civil rights movement. As he arranged his notebook on his desk, he overheard Mr. Bradley speaking to another teacher in the hallway. "I just don't think some of these kids understand the effort it takes to succeed," Mr. Bradley said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Especially kids like Marcus, always looking for shortcuts." The words stung, leaving Marcus frozen in his seat. Though the conversation ended as the bell rang, it planted a seed of doubt in his mind. For the first time, Marcus questioned whether his teacher's criticisms were more personal than professional. It was a Friday afternoon, and the history class was abuzz with chatter. Mr. Bradley stood at the front, outlining the details of an upcoming group project on the civil rights movement. Marcus, sitting in the middle row, raised his hand enthusiastically. "Marcus, I didn't even ask the question yet," Mr. Bradley said with a sharp edge, prompting scattered laughter from the class. Marcus lowered his hand, heat rushing to his face. As Mr. Bradley explained the project, he assigned group leaders, bypassing Marcus despite his strong track record in class. Instead, he was placed in a group led by Olivia, one of the more outspoken students. When Olivia began dividing tasks, Marcus offered, "I could work on the research for Martin Luther King Jr.'s speeches." Before Olivia could respond, Mr. Bradley interjected, "Marcus, let's not overcomplicate things. Maybe stick to simpler tasks, like organizing the slides. Leave the deeper research to others who can handle it." The room went silent. Marcus felt the sting of the words, his classmates exchanging awkward glances. His face burned with humiliation, but he forced a tight smile and nodded. After class, Marcus lingered in his seat, staring at the scuffed wooden desk. His friends, Jordan and Emily, tried to cheer him up as they walked to the cafeteria. "Don't let him get to you," Emily said. "Everyone knows you're the smartest in that class." "Yeah," Jordan added. "Bradley's just salty because you're smarter than him." Marcus chuckled half-heartedly, but the weight of the incident lingered. That evening, he confided in his mother over dinner. "Why do you think Mr. Bradley always targets me?" Marcus asked, pushing peas around his plate. His mother paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes, people don't realize the biases they carry. It's not your job to change his mindset, but you can stand up for yourself in a way that shows your strength." Her words stayed with him, but the uncertainty remained. Should he confront Mr. Bradley or stay silent? The weekend offered little solace. Marcus struggled to focus on his assignments, replaying Mr. Bradley's words in his mind. By Sunday night, he resolved to prove his teacher wrong by going above and beyond on the project. Monday morning brought a mix of determination and dread. In history class, Marcus shared his research ideas with his group, only to have Olivia dismiss them, parroting Mr. Bradley's earlier remarks. As the week went on, the weight of the incident began to show. Marcus's usually vibrant demeanor dimmed, and he avoided raising his hand in class. Even in basketball practice, where he was usually a star player, his focus wavered. Despite his inner turmoil, Marcus refused to give up. He poured himself into the project, spending hours after school in the library. But the question lingered. Would it even matter to Mr. Bradley? The following week, presentations began. Groups showcased their projects while Mr. Bradley sat at the back, clipboard in hand, his expression unreadable. When it was Marcus's group's turn, he stepped forward, his heart pounding as he held a stack of carefully prepared note cards. He began by explaining the significance of Martin Luther King Jr.'s speeches in mobilizing the civil rights movement, quoting key excerpts and providing historical context. The class listened intently, and for a moment, Marcus felt a glimmer of pride. But as he finished, Mr. Bradley leaned back in his chair and said, "That was adequate, Marcus, but I think you might have missed the bigger picture here. Anyone else want to add something more substantial?" The words hit like a punch to the gut. Marcus's face fell as Olivia awkwardly stepped in, fumbling through points Marcus had already covered. The rest of the group exchanged uncomfortable glances, but no one spoke up in his defense. The final blow came when Mr. Bradley marked their project a C+. "Next time, aim for deeper analysis," he commented. Marcus clenched his fists under the desk, his pride and effort reduced to nothing in a few dismissive words. During lunch, Marcus's frustration boiled over. "Why does he always do this to me?" he said to Jordan and Emily, slamming his tray onto the table. Jordan shook his head. "That wasn't fair, man. You carried that whole project." "You should talk to someone," Emily suggested. "This isn't just criticism. It's personal." That evening, Marcus's parents noticed his unusual quietness at dinner. When he explained what had happened, his father frowned deeply. "Son, you don't deserve this. We're going to address this together." The next day, his parents scheduled a meeting with the principal, Mr. Anderson. During the meeting, they shared their concerns about Mr. Bradley's treatment of Marcus, recounting specific incidents. Mr. Anderson listened intently, taking notes. "This is serious," Mr. Anderson said. "I'll investigate this personally." Marcus couldn't help but feel conflicted. On one hand, he was relieved that his parents had taken action. On the other, he feared the fallout. What if speaking up only made things worse? In the days that followed, Marcus began avoiding history class altogether, feigning headaches or asking to study in the library. His passion for the subject, once a source of pride, now felt tainted. At home, he poured his frustrations into his poetry, crafting verses about justice, resilience, and identity. One particular line echoed in his mind. "Even when my voice shakes, I'll stand tall." Still, doubt lingered. Would his voice ever be enough? One morning, as Marcus walked through the hallway, a classmate named Grace, who rarely spoke to him, approached hesitantly. "I saw what happened during your presentation," she said. "It wasn't right. If you need someone to back you up, I will." The unexpected support gave Marcus a glimmer of hope. Perhaps he wasn't as alone as he thought. The tension reached its peak when Mr. Bradley made a dismissive comment in class about Marcus wasting potential after Marcus questioned a historical fact. This time, it wasn't just Marcus who noticed. Grace raised her hand. Mr. Bradley, don't you think Marcus's question was valid? Isn't it important to encourage curiosity? The room fell silent, and Mr. Bradley's face darkened. Grace, I think I know how to handle my classroom, he replied sharply. But the seed was planted. Classmates began murmuring among themselves, and the divide between Mr. Bradley and his students became increasingly apparent. When Marcus returned home that day, his father handed him a printout of an email from Mr. Anderson. It stated that a formal meeting with Mr. Bradley had been scheduled, and Marcus was invited to share his experience directly. The stage was set for a confrontation that could change everything. The meeting took place on a gray Wednesday morning in the school's administrative office. Marcus, flanked by his parents, sat across from Principal Anderson. Mr. Bradley arrived shortly after, his expression a mixture of annoyance and confusion. Thank you all for coming, Mr. Anderson began, his tone measured. We're here to address some concerns raised about interactions in your history class, Mr. Bradley. Mr. Anderson gestured toward Marcus. Marcus, I'd like you to share your perspective. Marcus hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing on him. His mother squeezed his hand gently. Taking a deep breath, Marcus recounted the incidents. The dismissive remarks, the undermining of his contributions, and the public embarrassment during the group project. Mr. Bradley's face tightened. With all due respect, Marcus, you're misunderstanding my intentions. I push all my students to excel. If I've been tough, it's because I see potential in you. Marcus's father interjected, his voice calm but firm. Pushing a student doesn't mean tearing them down. Words matter, Mr. Bradley, and the pattern here shows something more than constructive criticism. As the conversation unfolded, Mr. Anderson pressed Mr. Bradley on specific incidents. The teacher's defenses grew weaker, and his dismissive attitude began to crack. Midway through the meeting, Principal Anderson pulled out a folder. We've also received anonymous reports from other students who've noticed similar behavior in your class, Mr. Bradley. Some even included detailed accounts of comments you've made toward Marcus. Mr. Bradley's face flushed. Anonymous reports? This is outrageous. I've always treated my students equally. Mr. Anderson didn't waver. Intent doesn't erase impact. We're here to address how your actions have affected Marcus and potentially others. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. To everyone's surprise, Grace and another classmate, Jordan, entered. We asked to be here, Grace said. We saw how Marcus was treated, and we want to speak up. Their testimony was clear and unwavering. They highlighted specific moments when Mr. Bradley's behavior crossed the line, providing corroboration to Marcus's claims. For the first time, Mr. Bradley looked genuinely shaken. The realization of his actions, and their consequences, began to set in. The room fell silent for a moment as Mr. Bradley lowered his gaze. I never intended to hurt anyone, he said quietly, his tone lacking its usual arrogance. But I see now that I've been blind to how my words and actions have come across. Marcus felt a mix of emotions, anger, relief, and vindication. Speaking up had been terrifying, but it had made a difference. Mr. Anderson turned to Marcus. Thank you for your courage, Marcus. You've not only stood up for yourself, but set an example for others. Marcus's mother smiled through teary eyes, and his father gave him a proud nod. Grace and Jordan offered encouraging smiles as well. The meeting concluded with Mr. Anderson outlining steps to address the issue, including mandatory sensitivity training for Mr. Bradley and a review of classroom practices. Walking out of the office, Marcus felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, he felt truly seen and heard. The days following the meeting marked a turning point for Marcus. Mr. Bradley returned to the classroom with a noticeable shift in demeanor. He began to encourage open discussions, treating all students' contributions with respect. Though his tone remained firm, the sharp edge that had defined his interactions with Marcus was gone. During one class, Mr. Bradley approached Marcus after a presentation. You did an excellent job today, Marcus, he said, his voice genuine. Your analysis was insightful. Though the compliment felt overdue, Marcus accepted it with grace. "Thank you, Mr. Bradley," he replied, feeling a sense of closure. Outside of class, Marcus's peers showed their support in subtle but meaningful ways. Grace invited him to collaborate on a student-led diversity initiative, while Jordan rallied their basketball teammates to nominate Marcus for a leadership award. Marcus's confidence began to bloom again. In history class, he resumed raising his hand, no longer hesitant about how his contributions might be received. He even volunteered to lead a new group project, earning praise from his classmates and, surprisingly, Mr. Bradley. Outside of academics, Marcus embraced opportunities to use his voice for change. At the school assembly, he recited one of his poems, centered on resilience and self-worth. The applause that followed was thunderous, a testament to how much his journey had inspired others. Even Mr. Anderson commended him afterward. "You've turned a difficult experience into something powerful, Marcus. Keep leading by example." One evening, Marcus sat at his desk, flipping through a notebook filled with poems he'd written over the past few weeks. Each line captured a piece of his journey, his doubts, his courage, and his ultimate triumph. As he penned the final verse of a new poem, he reflected on how far he had come. The boy who once feared speaking up had discovered his voice and, with it, the strength to stand tall against adversity. "Even when the world feels heavy," he wrote, "I'll carry the weight and rise higher." The following Monday, Marcus walked into school with his head held high. The hallway buzzed with chatter, but he felt a quiet confidence as he passed his peers. In history class, Mr. Bradley greeted him with a nod. "Good morning, Marcus. Ready to lead today's discussion?" Marcus smiled. "Always." As he spoke to the class, his voice steady and assured, the once overwhelming fear seemed like a distant memory. He had not only faced his challenges, but emerged stronger, ready to forge a brighter future. Walking home that afternoon, Marcus noticed a tree near the schoolyard. Its branches stretched wide, weathering the chill of winter with unwavering strength. He paused, realizing the tree mirrored his own journey, steadfast, resilient, and rooted in growth. Marcus smiled, his resolve firm. The road ahead might hold more challenges, but he was ready to meet them, one step at a time.